Everybody, welcome back to the Who Cares podcast. My name's Laura Travers. I'm from the Devon Alliance for International Recruitment. I'm joined today by Emily Winslow from our Devon Alliance for International Recruitment team.
Hello.
Holly from the Devon NHS vaccinations team, welcome. Jeffrey from Devon Care Homes Collaborative, nice to see you, Jeffrey. And Luce from Torbay, oh goodness.
Public health.
That's the one, thank you, Torbay Public Health. Emily and I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the Revocation project that we're working on. So what does it mean, Emily?
So just to give you a little bit of background, so the Devon Alliance for International Recruitment are an NHS team, and we have worked with social care providers to recruit international carers and nurses into the social care sector over the last couple of years. Very successfully. We've brought in about 120 care workers and nurses to join domiciliary care and companies and also care homes. And that's been great. Recently, the landscape has changed. So we have been drafted in by local authorities to try and help with the revocation. We're calling it the Revocation project. It's about providers who have sponsorship licenses to recruit international carers and nurses who have lost their licence for many different reasons. But what it means is that we've now got lots of carers in the UK out of work, and we are trying to support them to try and find them alternative sponsorship opportunities. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that really. We're contacted on a daily basis, aren't we, Laura,
We are,
by care workers who are in desperate need. They're not working, they're not getting the hours they're contracted to get, so they're living in poverty basically. They don't want to go back to their home country,
Understandably.
and so we're trying to engage with providers to try and support in this space. And it's interesting having Jeffrey with us today, because actually I can get a provider perspective on the problem. So you're obviously aware of this happening?
Yes, we are very aware of it happening. We have recruited a number of people who've been displaced from their previous employer, who's lost their licence, or they've actually, the employment circumstance has been so dire that they've left.
Yeah.
So we've had some lovely people, to be honest, who we've recruited through that means. In terms of what you're saying, it just blows my mind. I think we are so anxious for recruitment in the social care sector. The numbers are about 130 something thousand at the moment. It was 165, but even so, that's still a massive number. I would have thought that if you have a group of people who are ready and able and willing to work, the people would bite your hand off. So I would imagine, well, we've had people come our way because of they've been working up the road. We have snapped up is not quite the right words, but taking them on.
Been grateful.
Very appreciative.
Yeah.
And we've had some wonderful people.
Yeah.
And of course, some of the people we have recruited come over. They're qualified nurses in their own country, and they've gone through a process. They get a PIN number in the UK, and we've only got so many nurse positions available. We've taken on some, but we've got a full set, and they've gone to other parts of the country where there's a care home nursing job or to the NHS.
Yeah.
So we're always at risk of losing people, and we want to know that the pipeline is steady.
Yeah.
It's slowed down at the moment, and we're not recruiting too vast at the moment as we were post-pandemic, and that was a bit of a worry. So it's even Stevens at the moment, but there's been changes, and there's, as you know, making it more less likely that people are going to come over. They can't bring their family members, so we can't be certain of that. And recruiting locally is still incredibly difficult and inconsistent.
Yeah, absolutely. So you would. It's really good to hear actually that you would be open. You obviously are open to sponsoring displaced care workers, because they have such a tiny amount of time to find new sponsorship, don't they?
3 months.
We've got 60 days or something.
60 days?
60 working days, so 3 months. Yeah.
All right. 2 months. Gosh.
Which is no time at all, really. By the time you go through the whole recruitment process
Absolutely
and interview
not.
process and everything else, so. We do have a number of care workers who we're trying to support at the moment. Laura supports them in a pastoral kind of space, and I'm trying to help them, improving their CV and interview technique and that kind of thing. But it's really good to hear, because it's quite hard to encourage all providers to consider the talent that we've got in this country already, rather than recruiting more from other countries.
Yeah, there is encouragement to recognise the talent available in this country first, and I know that's been a kind of political direction of travel. But to be honest with you, as I said before, it's extremely inconsistent, and problematic, and always has been, and I guess it's going to be for quite a bit longer yet. So, but equally, we don't want to be dependent on a migrant workforce for our workforce. We have some amazing people, and they've blended and they've integrated, and I'm very grateful. We've had that for years through the EU, Romania, and other parts of Europe.
Amazing.
So we're not. We used to recruit a lot of people from the Philippines in years ago back in 2003 and 4, until the rules kind of changed and we went more EU. But so we're kind of used to that. The numbers haven't really changed that much, just that where they come from has changed. So. But how it's going to pan out in the future, I don't know. So people have knocked on the door, they've walked out, or they've lost, the employers lost their license, and they come in, and our experience has been incredibly good. The critical ingredient is that people are here, they're really keen to work, and they want a better experience, and hopefully we provide that. We have done. But it's more stable in our workforce than it has been for quite a long time. I think COVID did not help.
No. So what's your process? You say that you have people walking in. What's your process in terms of your recruitment? Would they follow the same process as a local care worker, for example? Or
absolutely, yes. So we've now, thanks to John, he's engaged, has some people present to care providers on international recruitment, which is enough to put anybody off. It's quite complex. And I say that speaking as an ex-lawyer. I was a lawyer for 25 years before I came into the care sector. And I thought, my goodness, this is really complicated for me. And I've got other people doing this on my behalf, and I'm at risk. So we had audits, and we were pretty good, better than I thought, but not bulletproof, because there were some scary things happening in the kind of enforcement. Maybe it was driven by politics, I don't know, but it seemed to be quite aggressive. And so we've outsourced our processing to a London company, and they do everything digitally, and they are hot on compliance, things being absolutely accurate, whereas I don't think we were as good as we should have been. Could have got caught out by fraud and that kind of stuff. I think they have good systems for catching these things out. So we've outsourced all of our recruitment processing to that said firm, whether they're local or from abroad. And we will still recruit from an advert or from someone who knocks on the door, or through them if we are not getting any kind of response from the local sources.
So you would put that person in touch with your agency that's working in London?
We would, yes. And they do it themselves online mostly. Some people do it, it's really smooth. Other people say, I got stuck on this and it's kicked me out and I can't do this, and they need a bit of help. But the process is intended to be foolproof and robust.
So what we're coming across is a lot of care workers that have been brought into the UK unethically, who've got poor English language levels, who have never worked in care before, but they've been given a care job in the UK, have arrived here, and for 3 months everything's been fine, and then the hours are reduced, and it's quite difficult to place those people because of their poor English and their lack of care experience. Is that something that you have experienced as well? And is there any way as a provider you can support a care worker in that situation?
I think there's a number of things I could say about that. Firstly, when we started the doors were closed on the EU, and that had been an interesting experience. It wasn't all plain sailing. When we started to look at abroad under the senior carer scheme, the decision we made, they had to be eligible to be a senior carer, and we made a decision to only recruit nurses, people who are already registered as nurses in their own country. And the thinking behind that was that they have an academic standard, we hope, and they've been used to working in a disciplined environment, and what we're doing shouldn't be vastly different. And so that's what we did. So then the government changed the rules and opened the doors to non-senior care workers, which I think was sensible. They should have done that from the get-go, to be honest. And so we continue to recruit just nurses for the same reasons, or open the doors a bit more. So we did open the doors a bit more, and actually we found that we have recruited some amazing people who are not nurses, and they're not looking to become nurses and move on. And some of those have been absolutely outstanding.
Yeah.
And they have had experience in a whole variety of different fields: engineering, psychology, biology, education. And they're looking to bring families over here for a better life. And some of the young single guys who are coming more recently, who are not bringing family because they can't, but they're looking for a better life. They want to work, and they've taken a drop in status. And then see things like, I really love what I do. So we're probably less focused on pre-existing health-related qualifications than we were, and we're looking for heart and soul.
You look at the person. That's really good.
And we find that if they've got the heart and the soul, we can fill in the gaps to bring them on board in terms of what we need to do.
Gives them the skills and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
We hear that a lot, don't we?
One other thing I would add to that is I think that what that means for us is that we're almost as much a training and development organisation as we are a care organisation.
Of course.
So I think it's, we're doing so much work in supporting the workforce, and particularly the recruited workforce, and especially the migrant workforce, that has become such a huge thing for us.
Yeah.
And so I think the responsibility is on us. What can we do to raise our game to ensure that our workforce is upskilled but integrated, and lots of skills are often mistaken for being mechanical skills, and listing of CVs of NVQs and courses and stuff like that. And the upskilling that we're looking for is the heart and soul upskill.
Of course.
Emotional intelligence, interpersonal skills, how they actually communicate with people, and that can be a challenge with anyone, anywhere, but probably particularly from some of our migrant workers. But if they've got the right will and the right heart, then it's just a matter of time.
Yeah,
definitely.
If we can be patient.
I've got a quick question. Sorry. So it's a question for both of you, actually. I know that when you're looking at COSs, there's different COSs. They're called. It's a certificate of sponsorship, and we would abbreviate it to COS just for the listeners. So you need a COS to sponsor an international worker, right? So for a worker that's already in the UK, you need an undefined COS, correct? So what would you advise somebody who is looking to a care home or domiciliary care company who's looking to take on some of these displaced care workers? How would you advise them to set up their undefined COSs? What would your advice be?
So are you talking about a provider that doesn't have a sponsor license?
Yes.
Okay.
So what's the process?
So the first thing you need to do is apply for a sponsor license, which you can do through the Gov's website, and it guides you through the process, doesn't it? I'm sure you've obviously done it a while ago. It's a fairly lengthy process, but there is it's very easy to follow. I think you have to provide some financial information about the company, establish whether you're a large organisation, small, etc. And then you need to submit a large amount of information to the UKVI, and I think it's 8 weeks it takes on average to get approved for a sponsor licence. Once you've got your sponsor licence, you can then apply for defined or undefined COS. I think that's correct, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that, I don't want to put people off, but I think that if it's quite a straightforward process to get a sponsorship licence, but it's not quite so straightforward to be able to be compliant and to deal with the expedition, and they are quite considerable without going into frankly. But I think it's an area where if you make that decision, and you probably would be because you need to recruit, and recruiting is not straightforward, you need to have on board some expertise and advice to make sure that you are going to be compliant all the way along the line, because I think we had to learn to up our game a bit, certainly. I feel very confident now, but I'm not sure I was so confident. Perhaps I could have been, but we were just one or two things that seem very technical. I think we got right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of the revocations are around things that are really technical.
Yeah.
It makes you think, gosh, is that right or wrong? But either which way is how it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's important as well, just so the listeners are on the same page as us. Basically, the government has brought in a lot of regulations recently for care homes and care providers, that they need to be at a certain standard, don't they? If they're not at a certain standard, then their sponsorship licence will be taken away.
Absolutely.
And that is the position that we're in now, talking about these care workers through no fault of their own who have been left without a visa. So
I'd like to think, I don't know, I'm not an expert, I'd like to think that's because people saw a loophole to make some money, to bring people here, and it's easy to get a license, but it's much more difficult to be
Harder to
compliant.
maintain it,
And I'd like to think that you know, if you are taking it seriously and getting advice and doing all the right things, if you've gone through that learning curve, then you should be okay. I'd like to think that the ones that have been revocated or revoked are because they didn't have a serious intention of being compliant from the get-go. But I could be wrong. But
no, I think that's what we've seen as well. And I think, you know, nobody wants to revoke licences.
No.
Especially you know whether someone's in it seriously and, you know, they want to do it. And if you've got a care provider who's made an administrative error, then possibly they'd go into the suspension stage, but then they have time to sort of
correct those issues
before they'd actually lose their licence. But as Jeffrey said, it tends to be those larger agencies that brought a lot of care workers in, charge the care workers probably huge amounts of money to bring them into the country in the first place. They're the companies that are losing licences, I think, generally. But I mean, you know, there are others as well.
Thank you both for that. So how would you advise care workers that are listening to this podcast that have found themselves in that situation where they've found themselves without a sponsor and without a visa? What would you both say to them, and how can we help them?
Well, they can contact us at the Devon Alliance, so devon-alliance.com, and we'll get in touch and support you as best we can. I mean, there are limited sponsorship opportunities, but we will work with you. We've got support, Laura, yourself, and also we're working with Plymouth Hope, who can advise people. But from a provider point of view, you can say that people obviously contact you directly to see if you've got any vacancies.
They do. What have been doing, and you know, in steady numbers. To be honest, I hope that won't continue ad infinitum. As I understand it, the list of who is a sponsorship license holder is a matter of public information.
Yes,
because there was a time when certainly I remember a while ago when we first went onto the list that somehow someone got my email. And my email inbox was then becoming. I couldn't cope with that. And so, but that's kind of wound down a bit, thankfully. So they can find sponsorship holders, license holders.
Ways, aren't there?
But other than that, I think people, if they're here, they need to do the homework. So, is this haven't had a great experience, or they've lost their license, or haven't been a great employer? You will know who's conscientious and who's not, and you will be careful from their perspective as well as the providers. So, and that's what I would expect.
My only advice would be tell us, reach out, the sooner the better, because as we said, you've only got 60 days. So the sooner we know something, the sooner we can do something about it. I know it's easy to sit on something and think that it will sort itself out, but you really need to be proactive.
You do need to be proactive. I was just going to emphasise that. We're not there, we can't just fix it. We would require the care worker to be proactive as well, and to do their homework, to get online, to see what the vacancies are. So they can get on Indeed, they can see who's recruiting, they can go onto the sponsor licence register, see who's got international licence. We can't do it all, but we're there to advise. We can help update CVs, we can give interview techniques. Laura can give advice on, accommodation, all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, we do get carers reaching out who aren't prepared to do a little bit themselves.
No. Or 2 weeks to go until
2 weeks
their
to go,
license
and
has
then
run
there's
out.
very little we can do to help. So I would say, we can support, but you would
Sooner
be
the
required to be
better.
proactive.
There's
as
just
well.
one other thing which I could probably add, which is that from my experience of being engaged with local authorities and the NHS and endless webinars nationally, I belong to the I'm a board member of the National Care Association and other groups I get involved with nationally, regionally and locally.
Oh, great.
And you hear what people are saying, what's going on. Well, the one thing that I think stands out for me as being very, very strong is that whilst there might have been changes in governments who've made decisions that might be unhelpful, or it might seem like a complex process, I would say that the commitment of local authorities and the NHS across the piece, since we've been embarking upon international recruitment out of the EU, they've been incredibly supportive of people and wanting to work hard to look after people who are here. So that, to me, has come across loud and clear. So I would say to anyone who is in that situation, don't be reticent about approaching yourselves for help, because you really want to help.
Of course.
And the local authorities are wrapping around that and are going to a lot of trouble to to take on that as a responsibility.
They're understanding more.
Very much so.
Yeah, that actually we need to utilise, as we said before, what we've already got in the country. They've already realised that.
Not only that, they also care about people.
Of course.
And if you're here,
Yeah.
you know, we're going to look after you.
Got a duty of care to you.
There may be some people that might have a different view, but I think local authorities and the NHS have taken that stance, and they're very supportive.
Yeah, it's good to hear. I'd also say as well, I would encourage care workers and providers to register on Infra 360, because hopefully we're trying to encourage providers to put their vacancies onto Infra 360, and then care workers can actually log on, see what's we're in the early stages, but we're hoping that's going to really take off in the new year as well. So
like a job matching service, that'd be really good.
Yeah,
That's a useful thing to say, and I can just chip in and say that you know, I go back 23 years in nursing care as a social provider for nursing homes. There's never been a time in 23 years when we haven't been recruiting.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. And so if people aren't posting a job, there are plenty of vacancies out there that are not being posted, and I don't understand why. Perhaps we haven't done. Perhaps we've managed to keep in balance between our recruitment needs and our recruitment that we've undertaken. It's been in balance, but it didn't feel like that coming out of COVID. It felt a bit rather more difficult than I'd have liked, but it's been even since we have been recruiting from abroad. And I tend to recruit ahead because I know that people will retire, or they will get married, or have a baby, or they will go to a different part of the country because a family member's there, or go abroad because a family member's there. Things are going to just happen all the time because that's just part of life.
Yeah.
So I've got to recruit in anticipation or risk being short. I don't want that to happen. So we're trying to be proactive, and I would encourage any provider to be proactive because that need's always there. As I said before, it just blows my mind to think that there are people looking for a job but they can't find one when the social care sector is screaming out for people to recruit.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
No, couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's been really useful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both for your insights. That was really interesting. Thank you.